Can AI teach you about the Bible? Stick around, I've got 6 real-world use cases for you to consider. Yeah, I know. There are a lot of problems with AI. It might well be the thing that destroys us. Probably not in a Skynet sort of way. Probably. But it does have the power to disrupt delicate societal balances that we depend on. The internet is full of discussion on the ethical, environmental, political, and cultural issues swirling around AI. I definitely have opinions as well. Most of what you hear from the popular talking heads is ill-informed. I think that the Pope made some very thoughtful statements on the subject, as have leaders from a variety of different faiths. There have also been some well-researched and level-headed statements from informed science and technology experts. I will say that if you are young in your career, it would be a grave mistake to not become educated in its uses. It isn't going away, and it is changing everything. If you do not master it, those that wield it may master you. With that acknowledgement, I will pivot away from such considerations and get to what this video is actually about: using AI to learn about the Hebrew Bible. Hello everyone, this is Gilgamesh. I'll cut to the chase and say no. AI cannot provide you with spiritual counsel. It cannot help you find meaning in life. It cannot perform sacraments, confer blessings, absolve sin. Although it could probably draft a very nice indulgence, but you would still need it to be assigned by an appropriate authority for it to take effect. So what can you do with AI? Well, I could share with you grand stories about deciphering old, long, unreadable manuscripts, and those are truly amazing feats, and I will probably make some videos about them in the future, so subscribe. There have been several of these, most recently reading a completely burned scroll from the Pompeii Herculaneum. But there's also a project called the Fragmentarium that aims to identify broken fragments of cuneiform texts that belong together, and other projects out there that are deciphering ancient handwriting and things like that. These are feats that are beyond the individual and rely on equipment and specialized training. I want to talk about what a student of the Hebrew Bible could actually do with AI. Now, I will warn you that technology is my day job, and what I find easy may not be easy for everyone. But have a little patience with yourself, and I think you can actually do most of these. As we go through this, something that I'm going to keep coming back to often is that AI works best when you tell it the answer. This is especially important when you move into areas of specialized or disputed knowledge. If you're interested in covering most subjects you might learn in high school, such as division or biology, AI will do extremely well on its own. On a few select subjects, mostly dealing with technology and the hard sciences, it can even teach well into the college and professional levels. However, when you move into the liberal arts, such as literature, history, anthropology, music, philosophy, psychology, it will often have a basic grasp on these subjects, but it falls apart rather quickly when you go beyond repeating what it has learned from Wikipedia. This is why whenever you're working with AI in any specialized area, you need to provide it with the knowledge it needs rather than expecting it to answer on its own. Fortunately, modern AI systems can hold entire textbooks in their memory. All of the major models on the market today can basically hold the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy twice over in its memory. Their usefulness, however, is mostly a reflection of the information that you provide them with. So selecting the texts you learn from is critically important. I must stress here explicitly, do not attempt to learn from AI on specialized or disputed topics by having it search the web or rely on its training data. It will confidently teach you data that is objectively wrong, and its basis for truth is primarily popularity rather than evaluating the credibility of sources. As you can imagine, few topics have as many diverse voices as biblical studies. Few topics have as many questionable sources. When volume wins, the results are quite bad. Having AI search the webs on these topics essentially says, teach me whatever is popular, any opinion will do. That may be great if you're studying fashion, but the most important thing you learn when you have a proper university education is to sift through information sources and evaluate them for credibility. AI is currently terrible at this. For one thing, choosing who to believe is an important part of using our minds. Minority opinions are frequently correct, and society moves forward most swiftly when people are brave enough to reject or challenge a popular consensus. AI will always push toward a consensus view. The first obvious use case needs a serious footnote, because I will tell you now it's a false start. The obvious use for a large language model is to chat with it in your target language. It can adjust its vocabulary level and grammar to your level. It can often speak out loud with correct pronunciation and can even listen to you speaking out loud. These are great things for learning any living language. But there's the rub. Biblical Hebrew is a dead language. I will caveat this by saying that the models are improving their capabilities in this area, but the corpus of modern Hebrew is so much larger than the corpus of biblical Hebrew that models cannot help but teach you modern grammar and vocabulary that simply doesn't apply to the ancient text, while also ignoring the primary grammar that is needed. If you want to learn modern Hebrew or any modern language, I would strongly recommend AI as an excellent tool for this. Talk to it, converse with it. It is endlessly patient and will adjust to your level, but not dead languages. AI has significant trouble understanding temporal order and separating its training data between what applies to a situation and what does not. The other problem is due to the nature of dead languages. We have very limited understanding of how dialogue worked. There is very little dialogue in the Hebrew Bible. What does exist is very stylized. The Hebrew Bible deals in narrative storytelling and in poetry. No one knows what Isaiah would have said if he wanted to order falafel and pita, or how he would express preferring an aisle seat over a window seat, or how he would get directions to his hotel. With the text we have, we are generally listening to a narrator telling us a story with no interaction expected, or we are listening to poetry. Trying to get a meaningful interaction such as dialogue simply lacks any frame of reference, and we would have no idea if it was something that would actually sound correct to an ancient speaker of the language, and it wouldn't prepare us at all for what we will actually encounter in the text. So, having a dialogue in the target language is all but meaningless, in my opinion. What you can do, however, is reading comprehension. You can give it a text you have read and have it read it, then ask you comprehension questions. Now, if you're going to go about this, I would recommend you stick to narrative prose chapters of the Hebrew Bible. Poetry is generally beyond AI. Its meaning is often disputed by serious scholars. There are frequently problems with the preservation of the text itself. It simply isn't realistic to have AI parse through it at this point. Pick something from the Torah, from Samuel, Kings, Ruth, Chronicles, Esther. Leave the wisdom literature and the prophetic writings alone for this, and get your text from a good source. I like Tanakh.us. I gave this a try, and the results were not great. There are today 3 big frontier model families: the Claude models from Anthropic, ChatGPT from OpenAI, and Gemini from Google. Each one of these has a free tier as well as paid tiers. There are a variety of great models that are produced by China right now, and I'm actually a big fan of the Qwen models, the DeepSeek models, and the GLM models. They're quite inexpensive, especially compared to their American counterparts, but they also all perform quite poorly on any of the use cases that I'm going to talk about today. So for this video, I am just going to talk about the big three. Claude, using this method, kept lapsing back into modern Hebrew. It could not stay focused on the ancient language. ChatGPT was not much better. Gemini actually did the best, and that is going to be a bit of a theme here. It seems that Gemini has, more so than the others, a better understanding of Biblical Hebrew and Biblical Hebrew resources. All of the models are kind of chatty, however. They frequently give the answer to the question in the question itself. When giving a Hebrew word, they just cannot resist also giving its transliteration and definition, and then asking you a multiple choice question about its definition. The best experience I had was using Gemini in its guided learning mode. This is a newer feature for Gemini, and it's decent. But even here, the level of questions were all over the place, some appropriate for a beginner, some really not. And the quality of understanding of the model was limited, quite limited. As it stands today, I can't recommend this use case as it just isn't there yet. So this isn't part of the list of 6 items, but I felt I needed to address it because this is a great use case for living languages, and I needed to explain why it just doesn't work so well for dead languages. I'm going to be referring to Gemini a bit here, so I want to explain. You can access Gemini at gemini.google.com, and you can find the guided learning setting as one of its tools there on that interface. There's also a second interface that not as many people are aware of at aistudio.google.com. This is the developer interface. It allows a bit more raw access to the models, and some of what I'm going to discuss actually is better done there than the main Gemini interface. Both interfaces have free tiers to try them out. No, Google is not sponsoring this. I wish. So, first real use case, BHS analysis. Okay, I did a whole video on deciphering the code of Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, and at the time I made the video, I was unaware AI could perform as well as it does on this task. It's an incredibly complicated resource to use. I tested every model that I thought had a chance of completing this particular use case, and the only one that worked at all was Gemini. And then really only the Pro model did well. You can access the Pro model for free at aistudio.google.com. If you're using the free tier, I don't believe it gives access to it on the main Gemini interface, but it does on the AI Studio interface. What you do is you can take a picture with your phone. You can take a picture of your hard copy of the BHS book, or you can go to the Internet Archive on archive.org and find the BHS there and just grab a screenshot of the page that you are interested in. Just capture the whole page. Hand it to the model and tell it to explain the apparatus. Apparatus is what they call those footnotes at the bottom, and that's the hard part to decipher. That's the terminology that best describes what you're wanting it to do. I would estimate that Google's models, the newer 3.5 Flash model, gets about 80% accuracy. The somewhat older 3.1 Pro model gets more like 95% accuracy. Other models tend to do quite poorly if they get anything right at all. Claude and ChatGPT got like 0% right. They just could not handle this at all. So this is a complicated task, and only a few select models are capable of doing it. Particularly Gemini 3.1 Pro at the time of making this video seems to be the one to use. Here I first had it run through a page that I grabbed off of archive.org, and I did it first in the 3.5 Flash model, and it did okay. But I immediately noticed that there were some errors in it. So I switched to the Pro model and had it give it a try. It correctly recognized the errors that had been made by the 3.5 Flash model, and it tried to correct them. Unfortunately, while it got closer, it was also still incorrect. It understood an abbreviation as being the full word, for example. It couldn't quite understand how some of the Hebrew abbreviations were happening in the text. But overall, it was quite useful. If I was still first learning how to use BHS, this would be very, very valuable. As it is, it does occasionally draw my attention to details that I simply missed reading over them, not realizing their significance. This is currently quite usable under Gemini 3.1 Pro. And on the free tier, you should be able to get it to analyze several pages before it says anything about your limits. Case 2. Analyzing a lexicon. Reading a lexicon is a challenging part of learning the Hebrew Bible. One of the best lexicons available is the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon of the Old Testament, HALOT. I put up screenshots of it all the time on my videos. And to an untrained person, this is really intimidating. But the information in it is quite valuable. That's why I put it up. And as intimidating as it is so much easier than the old Brown Driver Briggs lexicon that is still on many popular Bible websites, mostly because it's out of copyright and therefore free. It's also over 100 years old and out of date. But it used to have an even more dense, hard to understand code. HALOT is much easier to understand by comparison, but still quite challenging if you're not used to reading through a lexicon. And again, the model is going to matter a lot on this one. Gemini is again the only one that seems to succeed here, but it does it extremely well. Next time I throw up a screenshot of a lexicon entry on one of my videos, take a screenshot of it yourself and hand it to Gemini, again, using the Pro model is best, and have it explain to you what's in the entry. Now, I am going to say that I do tend to cheat here a bit. I have access to the full digital copy in accordance of the entire HALOT lexicon, and I have taken various pages that are found at the beginning of the lexicon where it explains all the abbreviations and siglia that are used and all the works that are cited, and I hand that to the prompt ahead of time so the model has a clear understanding of what every abbreviation and scholar listed actually means. Although, what I'm showing for this video, I didn't do that. I just kept it very simple. All I did was take a screenshot. Again, I went to Internet Archive, found a copy of HALOT there, and just randomly opened to an entry and took a screenshot of it. And I put it into Gemini with a simple prompt asking it to explain it. And it went through, and entry by entry in the lexicon, it explained what everything meant. It did a very good job. Use case 3, converting to text. If, like me, you have a large personal library of physical books, some of which are quite useful, but you tend to live your life at the keyboard, you know how useful it would be to get these books into a digital format. The books I often deal with have complex footnotes, they have tables, they mix languages, and sometimes it takes some real intelligence to transfer that into a digital format. Also, online, particularly at places like Internet Archive at archive.org, there are a lot of great books, but the text scanning somewhat falls short, especially when mixing together Hebrew and English or dealing with footnotes, multi-columns, and other complex formatting issues. This use case becomes quite important. Now, this use case, if you have a powerful computer or a Mac with a significant amount of RAM, you can actually run some of these small models and get great results, such as Gemma or Qwen, and run them locally without any need for the internet. Not going to explain how to set that up on this video, but there are many videos on the internet that explain it in detail. If you don't have that, though, there are still a large variety of inexpensive or free models that can help with this use case. This one is less tied to a specific model. What you need is a model with vision. A model with vision allows you to send it an image and it can see it and report back what is in the image. What I tend to do is send it an image of a single page and ask it to use its vision and convert that image into Markdown, preserving all formatting, including tables and footnotes, and identifying the correct language character set in use. If you aren't familiar with it, Markdown is a simple text format that can do headers, bold, italic, bullet points, and tables. And it's just pretty much what AI models speak natively. So it is very natural for them to output this way. And it's also very easy for humans to read. So it is in many ways the ideal model to transfer your books into if it can adequately support the formatting. You can place all of your photos from your book into a folder. So you can go through a book in physical life and just simply take a picture of each page, flipping each page, taking a picture, or you can take a scanned copy of the book that you might already have and simply divide it up so that each page is represented as a picture. A number of programs can do this for you. And you just simply flip through the pages and snap images. You can also do this at your favorite library. Then you write a simple script to flip through these images one at a time, present them to the AI of your choice, and have it output and save the Markdown files. When you're satisfied, these files can easily be compiled into a single file. But now you may be thinking, you don't know how to write such a script. That's okay, AI does. Ask it to show you how to do it, and it can. It can write the scripts for you and automate the whole process as long as you describe to it clearly what you're trying to do. With this here, I have a couple of examples. The first one here, I actually took that same page from the Lexicon, and instead of taking an entry, I took the entire page and had it converted to Markdown. It did remarkably well, and this is quite complex because we're mixing together all sorts of strange symbols and language markers, and we've got all sorts of issues with Hebrew going right to left and everything else going left to right, and we have multi-column displays. It was able to get it very close to perfect. There were some still right to left issues that it couldn't quite handle, particularly where the Hebrew text is followed by a number, like in First Chronicles. It wound up putting the one in front of, or to the left of the Hebrew, and it couldn't quite handle some of that complexity of language direction. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and it's better than anything we've had in the past from any kind of optical character recognition. The other one that I tried was from Emmanuel Tove's Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible. Great book, but very complex in its formatting. I turned it to one of the pages where it had some interesting charts, just took a picture with my phone. So this is one that I use just actually a picture of the physical book and handed it in there and had it do it, and it did a great job. Again, converting all of the tables properly, getting 90 to 95% of everything correct on the page. There are a few minor problems. The Emmanuel Tove issue was particularly challenging because the Hebrew letters themselves have certain letters in the Hebrew that are in bold or in superscript. It couldn't quite pick up on some of those nuances. But overall, it did very well. Use case 4, translation. We've all been there. You find a cool reference and you want to read more, but the text is written in a language you don't know. It's okay. AI models pretty much know every common language out there.
Did you ever see one of these electronic brains work? MRAC, for example?
Yeah. Just this morning, as a matter of fact, I saw a demonstration at IBM.
Oh? Did you see it translate Russian into Chinese?
Yeah, I saw it do everything. Frightening. Gave me the feeling that maybe, just maybe, people were a little bit outmoded.
There are a few ways to go about this. Google Images has a built-in translate feature that's pretty good. It used to be, actually, that I would take biblical Hebrew and throw it into Google Translate just to see how badly it would mangle it. It's actually getting a lot better than it used to be. It used to be just downright comical at how it couldn't quite understand what was being said. But it's gotten a lot better, and if you go to Google Images, images.google.com, you can give it a image of a text, and it will be able to translate it. You can also just hand it to any of the models out there and ask it to translate for you. If parts seem unclear, you can also ask follow-up questions. So I did this with Zeitschrift für die Alttestamentliche Wissenschaft, which is a famous work. And I just grabbed actually 3 pages on this that formed a small little chapter and handed it through, and it did pretty well. Now, one of the things that is worse than papers written in a foreign language is when scholars try to impress you with their use of jargon. It's a common gatekeeping move, and it's rather annoying when they use unnecessarily obscure and complicated terms to sound smart and convince others that they have some special magical understanding that nobody else has. AI can cut through all of this. You can take these papers that are written in a very complex way and explain them in rather simple terms. Of course, it can also do the reverse. It can take your very simple paper and add all of these complex terms to it, if that's your thing. Never be intimidated by how complicated a paper is. And AI will give you the tools you need to read any paper you need. Simply hand it the paper and have it explained to you and rephrase sentences that you find complicated or you can't understand the point. It is very good at that type of thing. So just upload your paper to AI and have it explain it to you. I'm leaving this as part of the translation use case because in many ways this is also a translation. Ask it your follow-up questions. Bridging the gap between scholars and students is actually one of the best abilities that AI has. Now, at this point, you may have noticed something of a pattern here. None of these use cases are really about just chatting with a large language model. On the subject of biblical studies, it just doesn't have that much to say that is useful. What this is about is bringing your own data and helping you sort through it, to access it and to learn from it. AI is at its most useful when you give it quality information. Have it sort through the large volumes and help you understand it. Do not turn over the job of understanding to AI. Turn over the job of flipping pages and looking at the index. It should free you to learn, not absolve you from learning. I have a few people who in the comments have asked me where they can get good resources. Well, first I should say that I didn't build my own library in a day or even a year. It has been many, many years of collecting. Many resources on the internet are free. Many you can purchase electronic copies from a variety of places. And many of the sources I have come from picking up physical books, both new and especially at used bookstores, and converting them to digital formats using the use cases I've mentioned. But I will point you to a couple of major sources if you want to get started getting your own library together. And you don't need to spend a fortune. I would also strongly emphasize that quality is far more important than quantity. Do not waste time with news articles that summarize a scholar's work or summaries of an archaeological finding. Do not waste time with Wikipedia. These sources are fine if you want to get a quick overview, but they just don't have the detail and the accuracy that you're going to want for something that you're going to actually study and rely on. What you want is the real sources that these summaries were built from. First, I would say have a look at Biblical Archaeology Review. It is a great magazine with quality content. It was founded by Herschel Shanks, and just about every major scholar in biblical studies from just about every background has contributed pieces to it over the years. For a modest subscription fee, you can get access to the entire backlog of articles, all of which are in downloadable PDF. They also have free books that are well worth a look. These articles are written in an accessible style with excellent pictures and are often ways that you can discover scholars whose work resonates with you, and then you can pivot from there to the more technical papers and articles written by these same scholars. Next, I would recommend you have a look at JSTOR.org. It bills itself as a digital platform for research, teaching, and learning. It's one of the most useful sites on the internet. A free account gives you access up to 100 articles a month. It also contains scholarly journals in every field. In the area of biblical studies, specifically, you can get access to Vedas Testamentum, which is perhaps my favorite and most used scholarly journal, the Catholic Biblical Quarterly, the Harvard Theological Review, Journal of American Oriental Society, Hebrew Studies, Journal of Biblical Literature, Jewish Studies Quarterly, Hebrew Union College Annual, and many, many more, as well as entire books that are released on JSTOR for consumption that you can simply download as PDFs and use on your own. This is just simply a source not to be missed. Now, with this next source of information, I will give you a little bit of caution again that quality matters, and part of the reality that is true with scholarship in general is that recency also matters. As we learn more, older works become outdated, and I would caution against just blindly harvesting extremely old works, because those works may have been groundbreaking in their day, or the authors may have been famous, but a lot of time has passed. In general, I would stick to works that were published in the last 50 years. If you know that a work has held up particularly well, you might extend that back to about 100 years. But I would be extremely selective in that. What tends to be the case with older works is that they are great for selective insights, but overall it is quite unlikely that a work of any size will not need major corrections based on new information that has been learned over the last 100 years. Scholars often build on each other's works, and information from these older sources does tend to wind up in the newer publications if it is held up to the test of time. And that is part of why going to the older sources is not always the best, because you lack those corrections and it's difficult to tell which portions have held up. There are exceptions to this, of course, but quality, up-to-date information is still the best. With that in mind, archive.org, that I've already mentioned several times, it's called the Internet Archive. It is a great source that I regularly use. You can access Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, the Hebrew and Aramaic Lexicon of the Old Testament, as just two great examples of books that you will find on there. There are also many other great older works that are also accessible on there. Archive.org tries very hard to obey copyright, and it does so in creative ways. And generally, you can find some great stuff on there if you look for it. There's also a variety of sites that sell books in digital formats. And there are also many tools out there on the internet that will allow you to strip off the digital rights management, the DRM controls, that they impose on these digital files that they sell, because perhaps maybe you should actually be able to use the book you bought. Also, there are a number of universities who generously release books, often for free, under licenses like the Creative Commons license that are quite worthwhile. There is a site, openbookpublishers.com. It's a great site with scholarly textbooks on a variety of subjects. Cambridge particularly has some great books on biblical studies available there for free. So the takeaway from this is start building your digital library. Go for quality, peer-reviewed sources that you trust rather than pure quantity. Don't go to simple internet searches or random people that you find that host a YouTube channel. Don't fill it with non-expert summaries or news reports. Go to the scholars themselves and try to get their real works. Now, let's have a look at use case 5, and that is my research assistant. This is actually a project that I've worked on for quite a few years now, and I've used it in a variety of subjects, not just the Hebrew Bible. This is by far the most technically challenging of the use cases that I want to show you today. The source code for this I have made available on GitHub for anybody that wants to build it themselves. It is nothing particularly special or sophisticated. Let me explain how it works. First step is you build your digital library. My digital library has literally hundreds of books and thousands of articles. Step 2, Make sure that the books and the articles are in a nice, readable format. Recent PDF files that have been specifically made to be PDF files correctly are often fine. Raw scans and really old PDF files or PDF files of complicated texts probably need conversion to Markdown or some other suitable format, as we discussed back in use case 3. We like to say garbage in, garbage out. Make sure that your file is readable and accurate for good results. Step 3, we chop these files up and place them in what's called a vector database. I've written scripts as part of the code that is on GitHub there that does all of this for you. You just put the sources in a directory, it handles the rest. I use ChromaDB as the vector database, and it works really well for my purposes. Here's how I once explained it.
To understand a vector database, we must first map data. It uses cosine similarity with vectors mapped across high-dimensional space.
Yes, I've been doing this for a very long time. Basically, it stores chunks of text, which are usually a few paragraphs in length, and indexes them based on their meaning. When you pose a question, it finds the chunks that are most similar to the question that you are asking and returns them. This isn't pattern matching. It's a sophisticated natural language semantic matching. Once it does this and you have these chunks, step 4 is you launch the web interface and you ask a question. On the back end, it accesses this database along with your question, and it queries its thousands of sources. It pulls about 50 of the best chunks, and it also grabs some of the surrounding chunks as well for context, and it assembles all of this information into a single prompt. It's probably the equivalent of about a 50-page book, with pages from dozens of reputable books on the subject that I am asking about, all assembled here. Now, all this happens on my local machine without ever touching any internet service. This is all local. Then the final step is where we reach out to a cloud service. I have it send the prompt off to Google Gemini in the background. It gives it all of the selected documents, it gives it my question, and it gives it some information about how I want it to answer, the style I want it to use, how I want it to cite sources, and so forth. It explicitly tells it not to rely on any of its training data or any other information such as a web search, but only the information that I have provided it. This is doing a lot, so you have to be very patient while it happens. It is not fast. But when it comes back, the answer, along with the information about what books it pulled it from, since I have digital copies of all these books, I can easily search any of them to find the original text. So checking the sources is quite easy for me. Although I also log the entire prompt that I sent it, which also makes it especially easy to understand where it got these answers. And it does it very well. I find very few problems with it altering the meaning of the text or misunderstanding it. And so this has been very accurate in getting good questions. I also have it, recently I've had it suggest other questions that might be asked. And this has actually been very fun to simply just get on a subject and having it prompt you for other things you might want to learn about. And it's very useful for going through these large amounts of data and bringing to your attention things that you want to read about them. And here, as a result, I have a usually very well-written college-level answer to my question, along with citations of where it all comes from. This generally works fine on the free tier of Google Gemini. This doesn't really cost anything. If you decide to pay for Gemini, it's still pennies per question, like less than a cent usually per question. I want to be clear here. This is not marvelously complicated. It's actually quite simple, and it took very little talent to put it together. The power is from the source materials. The AI here is just sorting through them to find the appropriate information and polish it a little to make a smooth presentation. If the idea of installing something like this intimidates you, I recommend that you use a local AI agent such as Hermes Agent or OpenCode or Codex or Claude Code or one of many others that are out there. Running a local agent will allow AI to fully assist you in setting things up on your local computer system. But I also have to emphasize that that comes with risks. Consult someone who knows technology to advise you on this if you're not comfortable with it. But if you are, or if you're comfortable installing some basic Python scripts yourself, I would love to hear if this program is useful for you and if you're able to do something useful with it. Or we can go on to use case 6. Well, I've been using my own system since before Google marched this product out. I've also been involved with testing Google's product I'm about to talk about since it was in its early alpha stages. And I've had several chats with the original engineers who worked on it. I think it is one of the best things that Google has produced. Although not every feature in it resonates with me personally, the system is still incredibly useful. While my system is capable of handling thousands of sources, what if you didn't have that big of a library and you had more around, say, 50 sources or less? The product is NotebookLM. You will find it at notebooklm.google.com. If you want something like what I built, but you don't really want to go that far down the rabbit hole, at least not at first, then gather your sources, maybe around 20 to 50 of them, and you could even start with 1 or 2 quality book-length sources if you just want to get started. There is a free tier and there are paid tiers. Again, it is vitally important that you control the quality of information that goes in. The program from Google has the ability to search the web for more sources for you. I would discourage this for a topic such as this. Upload your sources to the system, sources you trust. Then start asking it questions. You can even customize the prompt to have it act more like a teacher or to prompt you with things you might want to ask about. You can customize its tone and answer length and dial it in to just exactly how you want it. And yes, it will cite the sources for you of where it's getting its information so you can be sure that it is from the things that you gave it. For most people, this is actually what I recommend as the best study aid. Make a notebook, upload your whole Hebrew grammar book there. Most of the guided learning stuff that I mentioned, it's actually better here than there. That's why I would recommend this as the better way to do it. Now, you may have heard about some of the other features of this product, such as it can make podcasts and videos and so forth. I have indeed experimented with these. In fact, some of the earliest things that I posted to this channel were early podcasts that I created with NotebookLM. I was mostly just fooling around, and I thought it was kind of cool. But I quickly got rather nauseated by the fake AI personalities. It was amazing a few years ago, the human-like expression of 2 radio hosts that could talk over each other and laugh and all of that. But before long, it was clear that you couldn't steer the conversation well enough to get them to talk about the things you wanted. They were missing the insights you wanted them to find, and they repeated the same grating phrases over and over. It was sort of like hearing the most consequential information that you care about discussed by the most shallow and vacuous speakers on talk radio. Now, it has improved quite a bit since then. And you can even interrupt it now and ask questions as you listen to the podcast. So if you enjoy it, go for it. Don't let my naysaying disturb you at all. For some people, this is a great way to learn, and they find this type of learning useful. It will burn up your usage of the free tier pretty fast, though. Now, I popped into NotebookLM here. I just created a new notebook, and I popped in one of the free books that was on the Open Publishers site there, Roles and Relations of Biblical Law, talks about the holiness code in Leviticus. And I asked it a few questions, and I had it create some of its various artifacts that it calls it. Some of the newer features here I do have a bit of mixed opinions on. I actually find that the infographics and the slideshows are pretty nice. They work best if you focus them on a specific question and don't allow it to be too general. The mind map feature, I don't know. I don't find it as useful as other people do. To me, it feels like you could always get the same information just by looking at the table of contents. And so I don't feel like it's a great tool for learning. But the flashcards and the quizzes are also pretty good. So if you have a text that you're interested in learning from, it can help you in all of these ways. Honestly, though, most of this stuff is fluff. The real value is the ability to ask questions and get grounded answers. So whatever you have questions about, if you have books that you know would contain that kind of answer, you place those books in your notebook and then you ask the questions and you will get answers that are well grounded in scholarship that you trust. And while this system will limit you to a narrow set of reference texts, you won't be able to put thousands of texts in here. If those reference texts are good, the answers will also be good. Now, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You should really like and subscribe. This is a bit of a deviation from my normal channel content, and I hope that my viewers will either find it useful or will at least indulge me a little bit. I am going to put together a document and link it to this video either in the comments or the description, or YouTube has some now new feature that you can link documents to a video. I'll check it out and see whatever's best. But I'll put the results of some of my tests in there if you want to have a closer look at some of the things I've shown you here as to what I asked, what prompts I used, what kind of responses I got. So I hope if you take away anything from this, it is that AI itself isn't evil or useless. The same cannot always be said of the billionaire class that are currently profiting from it. It is, however, a major scientific breakthrough. It is powerful. The hard reality is it is here to stay, and it's often being promoted as a way to turn off your own judgment and thinking in submission to a master algorithm driven by popular trends. If instead you harness it and match it to your own goals, it can be used to enhance education and solve real-world problems. If we're going to survive the coming disruption, I fear it requires us to choose a harder path. Neither rejecting such a powerful tool nor surrendering to its entrancing powers is a good solution. We must do as we have always been called to do, and that is to become the best version of ourselves and to use the tools available to us to achieve that. So, until the robotic overlords take us out, I wish you all shalom.